Hey again, this is Jerry Roberts, and we're focusing once again on some of the issues that cause tension when people attempt to cross cultures. This particular comparison that we're going to be looking at has to do with self-worth. In other words, how does a person, how is a person valued within their culture, and how is that value determined? The comparison is going to be between ascribed worth or self-worth and earned worth. Ascribed self-worth has to do with worth that is given to a person automatically because usually of what family they were born into and what position they were born into, and that means it's given to them. Earned worth or earned self-worth is the worth is accomplished through completing tasks, between basically earning your way up a ladder in order to be considered worth something. So when we look at these, one of the main questions that you can look at these two pictures. And both of these pictures, believe it or not, are pictures of kings. Now, the first one that you see is the King of Thailand. The King of Thailand. And it's interesting to look at this situation of the King of Thailand and to see that everyone else in the room, now you notice the people in the background, they're not actually in the room, they're standing in a hallway just outside the room. Everyone else in the entire room with the King of Thailand is kneeling or they're laying down. They're showing subjugation. They're showing that they are keeping their heads lower than the king. Because the King of Thailand, when he is born into that family and becomes the king, he is to be honored among all other people. He's almost adored and worshipped by the people. And you should never, ever do anything to show dishonor to the king there. So that is an ascribed self-worth culture. The other picture is the King of Sweden. Now, if you look at this picture, it's hard to tell which one of the guys there is the King of Sweden. Now, the only reason I happen to know that it's the older guy there is the fact that he's the one who is having something kind of explained to him, and that's his wife standing next to him. But you can see everybody else just standing around talking to the king, and there's a guy who is obviously, I don't know if it's a field hockey or a cricket player or whatever that bat thing there is, but it is this guy wearing shorts and a t-shirt are just up there talking to the king like it's no big deal. Well, that is because they are not a hierarchical ascribed culture. The king is just basically one of them, is just one of the people. As a matter of fact, the King of Sweden, one of the things that's interesting about him is he tends to ride the subway to work each day. He actually gets on the subway with all the rest of the people, whereas that King of Thailand you see there, man, if he goes anywhere he goes in a motorcade with 15 other cars around him. So anyway, that's just one view of ascribed or earned self-worth. But let's look at some comparisons. Now, first of all, remember that, like everything else, this is a continuum. Ascribed worth is especially powerful in places like Thailand and like an African village, that where the chief is the chief because he was the chief's oldest son. And the chief's oldest son is going to be the next chief. There's no way of changing that. South America, Japan, and China tend to have a very ascribed self-worth. Europe and the USA, we tend toward being more earned in our self-worth categories. But you can see, even we're not totally on that end because we have people within our culture who are awarded with self-worth just because of who they are. So most of the world has at least some degree of ascribed self-worth as a part of their culture. So let's talk about some of the differences that we see. First of all, the first one is an ascribed, in a place where you have ascribed self-worth, your prestige is determined by your pedigree. In other words, the level that you're going to be within society is determined at birth. If you are the oldest son of the king and you live long enough for your father to die, you will be king. And there is no discussion. There's no way to earn it or to deserve it. You are just that. That is who you are. Now, that's an ascribed culture. There's many aspects of an ascribed culture. An ascribed culture could also be a situation where if you happen to be in a Chinese family or in a Japanese family, and you are the third daughter who was born into the family, you would be considered the one whose job it is to go to college, get a degree, become a doctor so that you can support your parents in their old age. Whereas if you were the first daughter, your job was to marry someone of a higher class in order to pull the family's name up. And the second daughter, you see, there is an ascribed role given to people, an ascribed worth given to people based on where they were born and which place they were born into. Whereas in an earned self-worth culture, the prestige of a person is determined by their achievement. It doesn't matter if you're the oldest son or the youngest daughter. If you go on to accomplish great things, you receive the prestige that you should receive based on your accomplishments, not where you were born. As a matter of fact, in places like the U.S. that has a very high view of this earned pedigree, this earned prestige or self-worth, we highly value someone who was born lowly and found their way up the ladder. We write stories about people like that. The person who comes out of nowhere, comes out of a difficult background, and achieves great things. And so that's something whereas an ascribed self-worth culture, they don't consider that to be necessarily a great story because the people are who they were born to be. Once again, in ascribed, respect is permanently fixed. If you're the oldest son of the chief, it doesn't matter what you do. You could be the most brilliant person in the world and receive a level of respect. You could be the dumbest, most useless person in the tribe, and you still receive the same respect because you are the oldest son of the chief, and therefore there is a fixed amount of respect that you're going to receive no matter what. Whereas in an earned self-worth culture, your level of respect varies with your success or failure. You could be a person who are born into a family that has got some wealth or got some position or whatever else, and therefore you are credited with a certain amount of respect because of your name. I mean, for many generations, the name Kennedy automatically received respect because the Kennedys were always people who were in positions of power and positions of authority in our government. And so that was something that carried respect with it. Now, over the process of time, though, if you did something horribly stupid and you broke a law or got sent to prison or whatever else, you could no longer be respected because even though your name was this and you were part of this clan, your respect fell away because of your choices and your success and failure. Now, once again, I think this is a good time to point out, we are not saying that one of these views is right and the other is wrong. We're not saying that one of these views is good and the other is bad. What we're saying is both of these views of how people ought to receive their self-worth exist in the world. And you come from a particular location that gives self-worth in a certain way, and you are going to encounter people who see self-worth being determined in other ways. And so what we're talking about is our ability to adjust to different views that are different from our own. And so we are continuing to look at this, and the next set of values that we see here is in an ascribed culture, and I've already mentioned this, that each person plays their expected role. In other words, you are born into a family that is at a certain level in society, and being born into that family means you have a certain expectation. Your family may have been the people who are always the bakers in the society or in that particular village. Therefore, you're a baker. But if you are the third son, your job might be to go and learn another skill set that you can bring into the family. Whereas the oldest son is going to be the manager of the bakery, and the second son is going to be the one who is the accountant for the bakery, and the third son's job is to go and learn a different skill to broaden the family's interests, okay? So that's the thing. You have an expected role from the moment you are born, and you're expected to fulfill that role. Whereas in an earned self-worth culture, it is not at all that you have a specific role when you were born. As a matter of fact, you are expected to reach a higher level than where you were born. If all works well, even if you were born into a family, for instance, like I was, where no one had ever gone to college, you are expected to be that first person who's going to go to college and get their college degree. And you're going to be the one who is going to do something higher than your previous generation did, higher than your family expectations were. So ladder climbing is respected. It's moving up the rungs, being different from what the original expectations were. That is respected and expected. Okay? In the scribed culture, people tend to associate with those of similar social status. They tend to associate with social equals. If you are of a certain caste within, say, especially in like Hindu society, if you are of a certain caste, you spend your life associating with people of that caste. You would not consider dealing with somebody of a lower caste, especially more than maybe one below you. You might have interactions because you have to have work done or something, but never two castes below you. You wouldn't have any interactions with them. You wouldn't be seen talking to people of different castes because you have an ascribed level of social status, and you're supposed to spend your life with people of that level of social status. Whereas in an earned society, an earned worth society, people tend to associate with those of similar achievements. So, for instance, there might be, I may be at a meeting or something like that, and there are a whole group of us there that are all working on their PhDs. And one of these people, their dad and mom both have PhDs, and they were raised in a family that are all teachers. Another one, like me, neither of my parents finished college. My dad didn't finish high school, but succeeded incredibly in business in spite of that. So once again, he started out without even finishing high school, but he achieved financial success through business. And then I went on to achieve success in teaching, success in the academic world that was outside our family's norm. And so now I tend to hang out with a bunch of people who are in academic circles and have their doctorates and stuff like that. Not because we all came from the same level to start with, but because we are all in the same achievement group now. And so that is just the way that it works. And as I said, I feel like it's very important to say again, we are not saying that ascribed is better than earned or earned is better than ascribed self-worth. This is the one, I think, more than any, where we have a tendency to really say, well, our way of looking at this is better than other people's way. I mean, we don't put people and put them in a box and tell them they have to stay there. From our perspective, that's true. From our perspective, we see our way of viewing people as allowing for more growth, allowing for more possibility of success. But in a lot of these cultures, they've got generation after generation, thousands of years of success for their culture as a whole because everybody knows what their role is from the time they're a child. They don't have people out chasing rainbows. They don't have people out trying to be bigger and better. They have people fulfilling the role that they're supposed to fulfill. And therefore the bakery shop is always open, and there's always bread ready, and there's all the roles in society are filled, and everyone is doing what they're supposed to do. So, like I said, we have to be careful. It is really easy for us on this one especially to say our way is better. I like our way better, okay? That I grew up with it, I'm more comfortable with it. I would have not been comfortable in a situation where I was told, because I was the oldest son, I must take over my father's business. That would not have been comfortable for me, but I wasn't raised with that background. But if I'd been born in that culture, my brain would have been processed, and I would have said, of course, I'm the oldest son. My task in life is to take over my father's business when he gets too old to run it. And so, as I said, it's a matter of different perceptions. of how things ought to be done. Well, after this, we're going to go into an area called tensions regarding vulnerability. As always, feel free to send me an email or text or get a hold of me if you have questions or thoughts about any of these challenges.